naturally I get the rare phone calls. Sorry, guys.
You could bring whoever it is on the pod. Who could it be?
No, it's nobody.
It could be a cameo appearance on the pod here,
terrible
Geoff.
telemarketing callers.
We don't get this. We don't get this on stage of the game.
Watch this. No way.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast. I am Tom Mills and today I'm joined by Sam Williams.
Greetings, Thomas.
And we have a guest on the show that I'm going to try and summarize, but I'm only guaranteed to do a bad job of it. We've got a guest who is an author of 11 books. He's designed golf courses. He's written for pretty much every successful golf media outlet there is, apart from Cookie Jar Golf. And he's got pretty much the first ever golf podcast in the state of the game. We have Geoff Shackelford. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you, Sam, for having me. I'm looking forward to talking golf.
No. It's absolutely our pleasure. I mean, we've been in touch over a number of years. You've been very kind enough to share some of our videos on the quadrilateral, and we always wanted to get you on because I've listened to your podcast and we hear your views and understand part of the way that you think about the golf game. But what's something that we don't really understand a huge amount about is the man behind the view. So what we wanted to get you on, just have a chat about you and your story and your route into the game and just have a general chit chat about the game, I suppose.
Why am I so cranky? Is that certainly would be a good topic?
No, we'll start. What do you think about the distance debate? Where do you stand?
Yeah, there you go. Let's get that out of the way now. The ball goes too far. There you go. Okay.
There we go. Done.
But I think as an Englishman sat here, you kind of consume a little bit of your content and enjoy a lot of the stuff you put out, Geoff. But it's not always clear a bit about you, I suppose. It's always interesting to find out a little bit about the man behind the website, the man behind the books. Where did it all start with golf?
Well, and I say that jokingly about being cranky. I think if you know a little bit about me, it's done with a passion for the game, and I think most people know that. Not all. Certain people and certain organizations don't take it that way. But I was one of those lucky people who got to tag along with Dad and Granddad. And kind of got the itch that way. I drew golf holes at a very young age. I actually came across some of those drawings the other day, and that was kind of fun to see. So it was one of those, I think, natural ways to get in the game that a lot of people are blessed to do, which is just to want to go and drive the cart kind of thing, and it went from there. And then I was very fortunate. My dad traveled a lot for work, and so I tagged along when he was announcing college basketball and other sports. So I got to see a lot of places, and then he moved into the golf business and got to see a lot of golf courses that way in my junior high school years. And he had a copy of George Thomas's book, and that was a big part of influencing my interest in course design as well. And then he joined Riviera when I was 16. So I kind of got exposed to golf architecture on a rather grand scale that way. And then I was playing junior golf, and I went to college to play golf. Was very serious about it to the point of probably injuring my wrist hitting too many balls. And so I played I went to UC Santa Barbara for 2 years, and then I transferred to Pepperdine and played college golf and played about 10 events. And in my career, no, it was more than, anyway, it was a small number compared to what they do now. And knew I didn't want to play as a pro and kind of had a bad wrist and really turned to architecture. And at the time, Riviera was redoing their greens, and I was just, it was kind of before everybody really took an interest in old photos and different things like they do now. And I got to know Ben Crenshaw a little bit during the project, and the Shapers, Dave Axland, Dan Proctor. And so that's how my interest in golf architecture grew. And so I got exposed to a best of a lot of things between 2 trips to play links golf, probably before I fully appreciated it, and then getting to play a world-class course for a few years in my most formative years, and play tournament golf, and I was just exposed to a lot of the things which I hopefully have kind of carried on in the things that I do, a variety of things I was exposed to, and that's why I've sort of done a variety of things in golf, because I like doing them all. And then you couple that with kind of the way the media world works, and you have to be on your toes and keep adjusting.
So you just kind of naturally fallen into because I don't know how you'd explain what your role is, but to a large extent, you're a commentator across the game in a number of respects, aren't you? So you've just naturally fallen into that, I guess, by virtue of being around golf, being really interested and passionate about the subject. And it's just kind of almost led you into these different opportunities, right? Yeah.
And I don't think that's totally unusual. I mean, Pete Dye was an insurance salesman, and of course, Donald Steele wrote and designed. And there've been a lot of people through the years who've had, I guess you just call it a life in the sport, where they've dabbled in a number of things. And from I gave lessons for a while after I was finished with college, so I've done that as well. And that's not totally unusual in the history of the sport. A lot of people have pursued different avenues and kind of gotten in certain moods, but architecture's always been the thing I've loved the most. And I edited my high school paper, and I wrote a little bit then, but I never really saw myself doing that, or certainly didn't see myself doing talking things and TV things. But that's again where it ended up going, and you have to adjust. And it's sort of relentless how in the media world, how you have to keep, for lack of a better word, pivoting, which gets a little annoying at times, because a few times in my life I felt like I've gotten pretty good at something, and then those things kind of disappear, whether it's magazines or different forms of writing and things like that. But that's just the nature of our world now.
Well, I think that's one thing we'll come on to definitely in due course, which is, the shifting landscape there with the media. You mentioned something at the start, which I was really interested in, because I used to sit in lessons really bored as a kid, and I used to sketch out different golf holes. So I was 10, 11 or 12. I think they were hideously penal if my
that's usually how those go,
650 yard water sodden holes. What did they look like when you dug them out of the boxes the other day? I'm curious.
Yeah, a lot of that, a lot of water, a lot of bizarre dog legs and different things. I mean, Tiger, I don't know if you've ever seen, there was a book, and I'm organizing my books right now, and I pulled it out, but I had it actually to show him. I got a chance to do an interview with him a few years ago, but we didn't have enough time, and it just didn't feel quite right. It might have felt a little bit bizarre, but it was published in a book, and it was one of his childhood designs, and it was same kind of thing, wacky dog legs, hole going up and almost coming back at you, and a strange use of bunkers and hazards and things. But I think a lot of people have done that in school books when they're bored, and it's quite fun. Yeah, I probably should post a few of those just to be just for fun. I try to encourage people to submit theirs. I'm sure people have kept their childhood drawings, and just a fun little side story. There's a young man. Well, now he's a senior in college, but who was introduced me a few years ago, who nobody in his family played golf, and his grandparents volunteered a little bit at a tournament. And anyhow, he just started drawing golf holes, and he was just drawn to the sport. And anyway, when he got one of my books, and he lives down near the Players Championship, and I met him. I'm still very much in touch with him. He's a very good college golfer, and that's one of the more bizarre things. I was sort of exposed to the sport with family and things, but to hear somebody just start drawing golf holes that way, I thought was really fascinating. And he's a great young man. So it's pretty cool that somebody like that got going like that. And then it was obviously very gratifying to know that somebody gave him one of my books, Grounds for Golf, and that sort of expanded his his way of thinking. So that was the neatest thing that's happened to me in terms of that book and reaching somebody in a way I would never have expected.
It's cool, isn't it?
I think hanging around as a fairly youngster at Riviera and seeing all that, what do you think it was at the time, do you think, that captured your imagination about golf course architecture? What do you think really, got the juices flowing? What was it that challenged you?
Well, it's a phenomenal course. And so I think, intrigued by what is it that makes it so great on a daily basis. And then it kind of evolved to wondering what was the thinking behind the holes. And then it evolved to, well, wait a second, why is this there? Did this used to be a bunker kind of thing? And that's kind of how I bonded with Ben Crenshaw, as I started looking for photographs, because they had a lot of questions too about the original design. And there were great old photos and things, but there were certain pieces that they still couldn't figure it out. What George Thomas and Billy Bell, the architect, tried to do, and so that was really fun for me to discover some of those things. Unfortunately, I discovered them well into the project, and they couldn't be implemented. Tom Fazio has since tried to implement one of them to just a total disastrous result. But the old 8th hole was a double fairway hole, and it's just horrendous. And it was beautiful. It was all right there. And I went over and looked. You could see it was a double fairway, and it was all still right there. It was really cool. So it was just kind of a combination of that. And then it's just a very famous golf course. So naturally, you also just you just can't help but be drawn to the history and knowing the people who've played there and what they did, and then getting to see the best players in the world there every year, pretty much every year of my life, except for 1 year they didn't play it there. So that's pretty neat too, and see the evolution of that, and see how it plays, and try to understand what the architect was doing. I just was always fascinated at that. Unfortunately, because I tend to lean a certain way, I tend to wonder what they were doing. Like, what the hell are you doing? Why did you do that? This beautiful property, and that's the best you could come up with. I do tend to go that way. It's probably why, it's one of the things that makes Jack Nicklaus and Bobby Jones so interesting to me. Jeff Ogilvy's one, Ben Crenshaw's one, where they play the game at an incredibly high level. And they have a very critical eye, but they're able to set that aside when they hit a shot and when they play. I had trouble doing that. I got very annoyed by a golf course, especially if it was just bad design, like just goofy and would cost you strokes. I could never get past that, and that's why I always admire those all-time great players who are also really have really great critical eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, you do wonder, don't you, whether actually having a good appreciation of course design does leave you pretty vulnerable when it comes to professional ranks, where you do start to look at things differently. You maybe take things personally, or you're critical or whatever. It's interesting when you talk about Riviera, though, because it's almost like you've got this perfect storm, and it maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, Geoff, but possibly explains kind of your views a little bit around the rollback and distance debate, because you've kind of got this magnificent club in Riviera, and we're obsessed with golf clubs and storytelling of what's gone on there, and there probably is few better examples in the US than Riviera. And you've got a course there that's becoming increasingly obsolete, haven't you, really, that with the events that turn up on an annual basis, it's becoming, it's constantly feeling shorter, and it kind of, I suppose, when you talk it through in the way you just have it maybe just pieces a few things together there, in my head at least.
Yeah, they've prevented it from being obsolete, but the things that they've had to do are awful. These long walks back into the trees, and the players see it, and it still is just running into all sorts of problems with pace of play and holes. Whenever I argue about slow play with somebody or the ball issue, and it's always great when you can do it with somebody with a tour who knows, because I've been going to the tournament. I mean, the first photo of me there is 1974 when I'm on my dad's shoulders, and I can basically remember every tournament since '84. But the biggest change, it's been a while. The last 10 years, the two par fives on the back nine and the 10th hole, the famous 10th hole, have added about a half hour to the round because both par fives, which were once barely reachable by most of the players, especially the 17th hole, it was just a big deal if somebody reached it. Well, now half the field can reach 17 and 2. Most of the field can reach on number 11 and 2. And then the 10th hole is essentially a long par 3, and they wave groups up and all that. But you watch that, and you watch the waiting, and there's a half hour right there that's just added on those 3 holes because enough players hit it longer. And so it's things like that you can point out where some people do go, yeah, that's not great. And of course you can only keep lengthening so much before you run out of space. So it's, it's frustrating to watch it. And it, when you realize the history, you would you don't want to prevent players from doing great things and being who they are, but there is a beauty in seeing, we're the only sport where you can go back to these places, obviously the Old Course being the most incredible example, and through the generations have people playing these same venues, and you'd like to preserve that. And I think we've seen real meaning to that. More and more people appreciating and players appreciating what it means to get to play a place and win at a place where they've been doing this a long time. And there's just something different about it. It makes your career greater. And there's a greater satisfaction in that. And usually they're in better locations and they're great courses, and there's a reason you want to be there. And not many players today are very nostalgic, I don't think, but they know that it's a place that all the greats have been at, and when you add your name to that list, that's going to be a thing you'll always treasure. And so that's why I bitch and moan about the distance issue, because I'd like to see. I've seen the power of it. I know what it means, and it's sort of pathetic that how the sport will pat itself on the back for its great history and tradition and heritage, and then not protect some very basic things to ensure that we kind of hand the game off in a better way.
Talking about when we first started this, you were talking about the renovation that happened at Riviera, and I think there's a huge trend now that goes back to courses trying to get back to the way they were because of the continued iteration that's happened with them. It's a huge thing that's going on in the UK for sure. I mean, do you think, speaking about the distance debate and then courses going back to the way they were, do you think that the iteration that's happened over time is always for the worse and the courses in the original state was always better? Because I find here in the UK, certainly there's a huge drive to get back to how it was, not necessarily when it was best. Does that make sense? Do you think those two things are linked or? Yes. And do you think that we can go back to the original design of these things and them still be relevant?
Well, now that's a different topic. Yeah, that is a tricky one. But to your first point, there's no question that there is a danger in saying, "Oh, we just want to go back." For instance, the project I worked for several years now with Gil Hance here at Los Angeles Country Club. The course we restored was a version from 1927, 1928, even though at that location it goes to 1920. Well, a renovation occurred. George Thomas did it with Billy Bell, but we also looked at the photos, and that was the course at its peak to us, and we made the case for that. And the writings and the history sort of dictated that George Thomas was involved in one version, and then he upgraded it, and then you start to see it decline. So there is sometimes you'll see courses go way too far with tree work, or they'll go very far. I shouldn't say too far. I don't know, but you do sometimes have to account for evolution. In fact, at LA, we did not try to make the bunkers look like exactly the day they finished them in 1928. We tried to bring back the shapes and the looks, but make them look 80 years old. And so that's a different element of this too, is sometimes places will take a course and go back, but it looks kind of polished and modern. And I guess to me, the sort of the dream is like taking a a classic car, but under the hood, maybe updating the engine and then in the interior, kind of modernizing things a little bit, but retaining the vintage vibe, if you will. And so that's the trick. And some people do it quite well and are quite great at blending a hole or changes in with the rest of the course. And when they don't, it really backfires. But then also trying to do these things, accounting for the modern game is tough. And especially when you do it for an event that's 1 week, when people play it every day. And that's a difficult thing to blend as well, and can often really go poorly for courses when you don't think about the everyday play.
It's so hard to cater for the professional event and then try and turn out a course that's suitable for the amateur, because they are fundamentally, they're just different beasts, aren't they? And it's impossible to make the two go hand in hand particularly well. You touched on the architecture work there with at LA with Gil. You also, I believe, designed Rustic Canyon together. Is that correct? That was a new build, right? So what was that like in terms of, approaching a new build? Because I mean, a lot of people who, work in that industry, a new build it's the holy grail, right? Because it's something that you can craft from the beginning. And, just talk me through what that experience was like. I'm just really curious. Did the sketches from when you were 12 years old, did they make an appearance? Did we get any?
No.
It's quite...
No.
I assume that'd be the answer, but tell us about Rustic Canyon, Geoff.
Well, I was very lucky. I had met Gil in about 1997, and somewhere, or maybe a year later than that. And he had said, if a project ever comes along, you want to work together, let me know. And so this project came along, and it, it was at a time when if the site in question became available now, it would be treated very differently. But fortunately for us, it was at a time when people were looking to build these high-end public golf courses around here and make a lot of money, and with a high-end green fee. And it was a time when people were building on mountain tops and sides and thought cart golf and all that was great golf. And the first day I went there, I just saw sand and I saw cool undulations. And I told Gil, this is phenomenal land. And thankfully, a very prominent architect at the time had looked at it and brushed it off as too flat. So he has passed, but I do thank him quite often for being that oblivious to what good golf land was. So it was really the project of a lifetime, in that I got to spend. I think I spent well over 200 days total out there, at least, probably closer to 250 from the beginning to the very end. And I got to walk the land and take photos, and I presented a routing to Gil, and I presented hole drawings that were kind of the starting point from kind of where we began in construction. And I still have those here somewhere. And so one of these days I'm going to do a lot of my photos are not, they're on a Mavica disc, which I don't know how to quite transfer those, and a lot of print photos, but I have those drawings, and someday I'll do all 18 on Instagram just to document kind of what the land looked like. But and then as it was just so much fun. And then as we cleared the kind of the brush and different things, and the undulations showed up, we ended up only moving 17,000 cubic yards of dirt, if that. And to start a project from kind of beginning to end, to get to hear the concerns at the time, because it's in a beautiful canyon. There's just a couple of little homes you barely see, and it's down at the end. And to hear people's concerns about what you're going to do. And at the time, I couldn't blame them. And I said that a few times to people, like, I don't blame you. I know it's hard to believe we're going to leave this alone, but we did. And everything they had as an example were just these awful overbuilt things, big tacky lakes, white bunkers, the whole thing. And so to see that transformation, and then since we built it, when we opened it, we just got a lot of, it's a nice course. It's a fun course. And it's so fun to hear that was in 2002. And here we are nearly 20 years later. And now fun is expected. But at the time that was code for, it's nice, but they couldn't host the US Open there. And which is just such a pathetic mentality. That's why we have so much crap here, is so many people built things thinking they could host the tournament someday or make it hard is good and all that, rating slope. And so now to see where we are is really neat. Unfortunately, we have a lot of bad golf courses. And what do we do with those to make them more fun? But that's the least of our, we have other issues too. But it's been fun to see now the people, and the other courses, by the way, in the area are gone. One of them's like, it's sort of been converted to an executive thing, and it's a disaster. The other one's it was a Pete Dye thing, completely abandoned. Too hard, too expensive, all that stuff. So it survived all that with a affordable green fee and good architecture, and people liking that. They've gotten over some of the quirk and some of the, first time. It's like any kind of links style, we'll call it. It's not a true links, obviously, but any lay of the land course, they're not always easy to wrap your head around the first time. And but that's the ultimate goal,
beauty,
really.
right?
Yeah, it's like a great album. We want you to
listen to it again.
It gets better each time you hear it, kind of, or a great film. And so we want that with a golf course too.
So tell me, Geoff, you hear of Abercrombie getting in a hot air balloon to decide how he's going to do the routing, and Herbert Fowler starting with the par threes. What is it how did you start that process? What bits did you go identify? Some greens? Did you think this is where I want this? How did you go about doing that? Yeah,
in that case, there was, knowing it was going to be a public course, there were certain parameters you ideally want to, in that case, hopefully have the nines return to the clubhouse. That's not always ideal, but knowing what we had and kind of also knowing the land, that was probably going to make sense pretty early on. So that was fine. That wasn't a huge, that didn't compromise the design in any way at all. In fact, it might have even made it better in some sense. I haven't really thought about that actually, but there were one or two holes or parts of the property that I immediately saw. There's one hole, it was literally looked like an abandoned hole. And so those were key holes, and they were kind of up the slightly higher ground, and you thought, well, these are going to be great finishing holes. And they ended up 16 and 17, but it pretty much started from there. And then just walking the land and somehow I didn't get bitten by a rattlesnake, which is incredible, because when we started construction, they were just everywhere. I really don't know how I avoided that. It so still makes me. Yeah, they're not attractive. There's nothing fun about them. But there was one other hole. As I got out there and looked at it, I just knew were essential holes. And then Gil had his thoughts but my background and having seen a lot of links golf helped. I don't know if a lot of people would have, because it is a course where you kind of go out and the front nine's on a little, it's a little more intimate. There's some shared fairways, also something totally bizarre to people here at the time. Probably still is bizarre actually to a lot of people. We also had some remarkably short green to next tee walks, which have kind of become something we've lost here because of people having liability concerns. And we got away with those. All anybody ever talked about were there were 3 long walks between holes. I'm like, yeah, but we just got away with some of the shortest. Literally, you walk off a green, you're on the next tee, and people they ignored that. But having seen a lot of great links, I knew that it was going to be cool that the front nine be a little bit more intimate and kind of on the lower profile ground. And then you kind of save the more dramatic stuff for the back nine. It would be stupid to Spyglass Hill peaks at the 4th hole. You don't want that in a course. You want it to build up. You want to ease people into the round and build up to a big finish. It's just, thankfully the land lent itself to that. Though it is funny, we had the option to go even more up in this beautiful canyon, and I just knew it was going to create more problems in getting it approved. I just knew when we went on that into that area, it would cause problems. And so we were very lucky. We got it approved, but I think it was because we were respectful of the land, and there are a lot of people hike and walk on a road along and that was another issue. We had an OB with a dirt road. Again, something people wouldn't have thought, like, how weird is that? But if you've been to Scotland and you've been to the UK and England and you've seen the great courses, you welcome that. And that was weird to people too. It's, there just isn't a lot of exposure to that kind of golf. The one thing we did chicken out on though is the hole that I mentioned that was just the obvious great hole, finished at a green site where there's a dirt road, and we really toyed with leaving it right behind the green, like the road hole, because the green had to be built up a little bit with a little fall off. And it's a beautiful second shot downhill lie, and you can run it up and feed it in. And we built the green like the road hole green minus the pot bunker in the front left, but we shaped it the same way with a fall off, but we chickened out and we moved the road. And that's my one regret on the course. I wish because it's a dirt road, I wish we'd kept it, but it probably just would have been way too much. We could do it now. We'd get away with it now, one, because Gil's way more popular and busy, and he could tell the owner to bug off. And I just think there's a greater awareness of golf architecture now that we could just say, well, it's an homage to the road hole, and people would go, oh, okay, fine. But 20 years ago, no.
You touched on it a few times there, Geoff, like taste change, like 20 years ago, it probably wouldn't have been the site. 20 years ago, it was like fun's an insult. Now it's the gold standard in what people are aiming for, because hey, guess what? We're playing a sport where the objective is fun for 99.9% of us, and you talk about stuff like now architecture's, it's a bit more en vogue. Stuff is changing a lot. And I kind of looking at some of the other stuff you do in your career, be it the broadcasting, be it the podcasting, be it the blogging, everything you're doing socially, the commentary you do across the game. I kind of, in my head, like, I suppose, one, how do you fit it all in? And two, how do you kind of keep the same passion for the game? Like, you must be so sort of like, you must eat, sleep and breathe golf. And there are days where you're like, actually, sometimes I lose a bit of the spark or a bit of the passion for the game, because I don't know, my observation is a lot of the people that work in the game and spend their life around it almost grow to detest it in some respects.
Well, I barely play anymore, so that helped. One positive of to your question is I do get away from it in the sense that we don't have a lot of great golf around here. I have to drive a long way to go play Rustic Canyon or somewhere. So I go to the beach, I exercise, I do things that do get me away from golf. But it is a great point, because it is amazing how many people who are in the golf business don't play much, or some don't like to play. I wish I had more time to play, frankly. But I also, hitting balls, I do a fair amount, and that keeps me. That gets me about the kind of the infusion that I need. I mean, obviously, if I would love to have the thing I don't get to do that I miss is late evening golf. And I just love that. And I don't have access to a place and I'm also a bit of a snob. So, there's a couple courses around here, but they're just so bad. And I just, I can tolerate mediocrity and whatever. It's a beautiful evening. It's just nice to be out to hit a ball. But when it's just grass and a bad tee box, and there's a point where it's like, I'm proud to admit I'm a total snob when it comes to that. And I just don't want to go do that. It's just not interesting. Got to have some quirk, some character. There's a par 3 course near me that's finally kind of getting back to being playable, thank God. And it's got a couple of really neat, funky little holes. And so that's enough to keep me. I went over there about 6 weeks ago, and I was like, wow, this was fun, because it just got something offbeat to it. but I don't have a great tolerance for the mundane. So, but yeah, I do struggle with my passion at times, because I am around it a lot, and because it is it's a sport where people are. It's a tricky time right now in the United States. It's always been a tricky one when you're like me, bitching about the ball going too far. But I have more friends in that argument now, which is really nice. That really helps. I'm not like out on a kind of an island. There's so many more people who are like, okay, enough is enough. And so that's really helped a lot, I'll be honest, because it did get a little old getting seen as sort of the freak who dares bring this up, even though some of the greatest players in the history of the game have made this point, and they're mocked. I mean, people make fun of Jack Nicklaus or Tiger Woods. Oh, Tiger just says that because he doesn't hit as far anymore, and you're just like, how can you say that?
Yeah, it's just such a poor comeback.
Oh gosh, and then same thing. And Jack Nicklaus, he could never make a ball in the golf ball business. That's why he does it. No, it actually comes from a place of observing the game and playing the game. And, Tiger's in a brutal spot because I think you can make the case. Well, I know you can make the case that he was robbed of some wins by equipment bringing up very fine golfers. Don't get me wrong, but bringing people up to a level them allowed them to compete with them for a little while, for 1 week. And he and Phil Mickelson have seen the greatest changes in equipment that any great players have ever had to deal with and adjust to, and they've done it. And I have incredible admiration for that. And maybe it's because I've grown up kind of on the same trajectory, starting with persimmon and steel and seeing what we have now.
But those two, isn't it? Was it 96 Riviera where Tiger teed it up? Was that one of his early professional events? I'm trying to think. 97, obviously Masters. You look at the wood he's playing with there. You mean
when he was 16? Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was tiny.
And you look at the equipment, and then you look at it and think, well, you look at what he's winning with in, towards the end of his career, and you're like, it's just completely different setup, right?
Right. And when you go through, because I've gone through some of the great. I mean, Jack Nicklaus played the same 3-wood most of his career. But even going back to all the way back, and then going through the generations, nobody has seen. I mean, Bobby Jones finished his career right as steel shafts came in. Walter Hagen, same thing. And so Hogan and Nelson and Snead kind of started with hickory shafts when they were kids a little bit, but not in their primes. And Phil and Tiger had to make adjustments in their primes. So anyway, I've gone off on a tangent, but the point is, it makes them that much more interesting to me that they've done that, and that they don't. I've tried to ask both of them about it in different settings, and I think Tiger got the question, but it's a no-win. It's a no-win because he'll just sound like he's bitter that Wai Yang beat him or something. It'll come off wrong. Phil, you just never know. Like, there have been times where he's figured that out, that is amazing what he's been able to do, and then there are other times he's just in full salesman mode, and the new stuff's great, and you got to move the new stuff and whatever. So, but it is something to really admire about them, and then about all the great players who have brought up these issues because they love course design. They love they want some continuity. Everybody understands it's not going to be the same, but there's no question those two, because I don't know why I thought about this morning. There's no question those two, if you drop them into any era, they're going to adjust and be great players. And I love thinking about that. And I mean, there's no way you'll ever know, but I think it just speaks to when you kind of know their sensibilities, their talent, their natural gifts, all that stuff. It's and I think the same goes for a lot of the great players of every era. If you gave them today's stuff, it might take them a couple of days, but they'd figure out and they'd be great.
Do you feel like the game's at maybe a probably the biggest junction it's been at for a long time right now. When you see the stuff, because we're going to probably talk about where things are changing now, I guess, but Saudi Golf League, DP World Tour, we've got a pace of play issue now that we're pretending that we care about with the green books, and is that going to make a difference? And we can debate that. And there's the distance debate. It feels like maybe that the game is it's almost like it's had that big binge sort of 15, 20 years, the big sort of halo effect to the Tiger effect. And, everyone's had a good time, but maybe it feels like we're a bit of a crossroads in the game. Is that a fair statement? Where do you think it'll go?
Yeah, I do think we are at a crossroads. I mean, you probably know from seeing me write about this a little bit. Hopefully, the Green Book thing is just huge because it's such a rare moment where the players clearly went, all right, enough. This looks bad. It's just bad. It's not skill. There's just so many things about it that are awful. And that's kind of an amazing change from where we've been the last few years, where the players generally are kind of on the defensive and they never quite get that. Nobody wants to make them look bad or take things away from them to humiliate them. It's about certain other things related to course design and setup and pace of play and all that stuff. It's not personal. And so to see, and I'm sure it was Rory McIlroy who was the main guy behind it, to see them actually kind of like, okay, we're going to deal with this. That's exciting. But then, yeah, everything else that's going on, it is going to be a wild few months for sure. I don't really quite have any idea how it'll play out, but my sense is that we are going. I think the more important thing is that the everyday game is not taking as many cues from the pro game. Yeah, and that's the ultimate positive. The pro game's going to go wherever it wants to go and chase whatever it wants to chase and tell us that Seve won 6 DP World Tour Order of Merits, and we're going to, it's just going to go off and it's commercial stuff, and they're going to be out of control with whatever they do. But my thing has always been, I love the continuity between the two when there's some relatability between the everyday game and you can kind of relate to the pros. But that ship's kind of sailed now. So the main thing is that the regular game doesn't get damaged by the pro game. And so we're kind of moving towards bifurcation is what I'm getting at of the rules. And that's really a positive. Just in every regard. Let them go do whatever they're going to do, and it's their business, and if they want to crash it, they'll crash it, but it'd be nice if they didn't, because we know from history that the pro game at key points in the sport has sort of, from starting with young Tom Morris to Tiger Woods with Arnold Palmer and Walter Hagen and Bobby Jones, different other times in between, that they have lifted the game, that maybe when it was struggling, it brought new life to the sport. So it'd be nice to kind of keep that connection for that next great wave that comes through and inspires people. But if it means building 7,400 yard courses and all the crap that goes with trying to keep up with the pro game, no, it's not worth that. And especially with all the things that have gone on in the last 15, 20 years of people appreciating fun and people doing what you guys are doing and highlighting, the lesser known courses that maybe weren't appreciated and now people are appreciating them. Things like all that kind of stuff is just so fun to watch happen. And in a really short amount of time.
Yeah, and I think the problem I have with bifurcation when I think about it is there is a lot of money being made by a lot of different places because they offer up me or you the opportunity to go somewhere and compare myself to the best in the world in the conditions that they were playing, and they make a lot of money off that. The Belfries of the world, the Celtic Manors, and all the other places that the pro events go. And people love to go there. They love to challenge themselves. And it doesn't matter if they shot 120. That's Tiger Woods played it like this from here. And is there Do you think there is a possibility that going down the route of bifurcation that you might lose money from the game or might lose interest from people that want to compare themselves to the professionals?
Yeah, I mean, there is a. I mean, I was that way when I remember when my dad and I played Turnberry when I was a kid. I was mad we couldn't play the back tees, even though I had no business playing them. I would have been slaughtered. But yeah, I was mad. Like we had to play a few holes at a lesser par, and they just didn't want people doing that. But I was 15, so. But I do understand your point, and I do agree with it. And again, in an ideal world, there wouldn't be quite the separation, and there wouldn't be quite the divide. But it's just kind of gone that way, and the way the equipment is made now, if you are raised on that equipment and learn to swing with that stuff, you're just going to have swing speeds that are really different than the rest of us. So it may just be unavoidable, but I do grasp. I mean, I think it's always going to be there. You know, the equipment manufacturers are very hooked on selling to about 1 million golfers worldwide who just buy the new thing. And the rest of the game is just nice, and they kind of buy things now and then. But they're really hooked on this group of people who are those addicts. And I don't like the idea that drives the thinking and whatever it is, course setup. I was just messaging with somebody today, just kind of lamenting, looking at fairway widths on some of these on the open rota courses and how ridiculously narrow they are. Like, well, why
Sam
is that?
Cooper by any chance, was it?
Or Joe McDonald, yeah.
No comment. And it's like, well, why? It's just absurd that the enjoyment of the game is spoiled just for this one event every 7 or 8 years, and it doesn't make sense. So I think it'll always be there, the desire to play those places and do what the pros do, but I'm also very heartened that we're seeing parts of the game break off from that, or see par 3 courses legitimized, or Himalayas putting greens, and get people off. By the way, that you're only a golfer if you have a handicap and you play 18 holes once a week and all that crap. You know, we've thankfully have started to shed some of that. Yeah, maybe I'm a golfer, but I mostly just go to the range. I have no problem with that. There's some people who, don't have the means, and but they want to stay connected to the sport. You're a golfer. You're family. You're with us, and I like that we've kind of gotten. We're getting past some of that stuff that you have to check off all these things to be a real serious player. I think that's really positive for the sport, and that will make it more welcoming to more people, because it's still just so intimidating. So especially here in the United States, to see those new avenues, Topgolf has helped. All these little weird ways to get you in the game. That's how you need to get into golf. It's not, you don't want to go in, like, go to the shop and buy all the new gear and start. You need to kind of, like I did, and a lot of people did, kind of back your way in, stumble in, or tag along, or find it by accident. You know, there's Aditya Shak, the great female golfer from India, like she and her family were sitting at a cafe and she saw a driving range and went, "What is that?" And she was just drawn to it. And now she's one of the, top 60 women in the world. And stories like that, I just love to hear. And golf tends to kind of used to scare people off from getting into the game in those weird little ways.
That's and that's where I think Tom's question is quite interesting, because it talks to like the two sides of the coin, right? So you got that side where it's the equipment manufacturers, and let's face it, turkeys don't vote for Christmas, do they? The equipment manufacturers want to sell golf clubs. Like, we can understand that. And, therefore they market, and you leave the decisioning power behind that, because it's like, well, we're measuring grow the game rhetoric around how many people bought a new Callaway driver or a new TaylorMade set of irons this week. But then, when we're on our travels, and we played, I don't know if you've heard of Sunningdale Heath at all, Geoff, right
Yeah.
next door to Sunningdale, the old
Uh-huh.
ladies club. You know, what the new owners are doing there, they've got a junior section of over 100 juniors now, you know, playing chipping competitions around the greens. They're learning how to play the game from the green back. And it's like, well, that's the KPI. That's how you're measuring how people are getting into the game. And I think it's really interesting how the whole thing will play out in the coming months and years, because you've got a lot of backing coming in from Saudis and UAE and people putting more money into that. That's going to then create all these new, I don't want to call them vanity projects, but there's going to be a lot of initiatives that come off the back of it, which will be there to grow the game. But then will it actually still keep the game in the sense of maybe the spirit and things that perhaps we would like, but then maybe we're in our own little echo chamber of, you know, really liking architecture, and actually maybe we're wrong on that. I don't really know. I don't really know what the question is, but it's,
well, we may be. No, I know we may be. You know, one of the things that's really interesting we're seeing here in the United States is we have a similar kind of desire to disrupt in NASCAR and auto racing, and the groups trying to do that really want to get the attention back to driving and less on technology, and really emphasize the driver, not the car. And I think golf is just always behind on these things, but eventually I do believe some of that will happen, where these various things that are being proposed and this little war we're about to watch. I think there's a real danger that they lose sight of the fans, and I write about that a lot. And at some point, I think we will get there where there is a desire to see the sport, because it is just gone in such a one-dimensional direction, the men's game especially, and now the women's game is starting to go there. And we don't want it to be one-dimensional. We want it to be multi-dimensional. It brings out different characters and personalities, and even people who are maybe new to the sport, even they recognize that, which is probably why I get so frustrated with some of the people in charge. You know, how many times do we have to watch a sport go all in on power and then regret it a few years later? You know, and again, regret going to a one-dimensional route. You know, tennis, baseball here, it just goes on, and it gets frustrating. But I do think that it's going to be a nutty few months here, and a lot of people with money are interested in kind of they have certain causes. I don't know, you know, and they're all going to mention growing the game. I mean, I saw that already in the press release. We're recording this here in the day the DP World Tour was announced. Had to think about it there for a second. And, you know, grow the game was right there, and it's grow the pocketbook. It has not, you know, some of these things are just laughable. I don't know why they try. So they're not, you know, the things that would grow the game are putting money into facility, like what the RNA is doing in Glasgow. You know, people have asked why the USGA for years hasn't put some of their money into restoring public courses. Other people are doing it now. We have the National Links Trust and Mike Kaiser, and different people are just doing it on their own. And the USGA should have done that, because that's ultimately, I mean, you guys have it there as well. It's just a hard sport, and you need to fall into it in a way that's comfortable and you don't feel pressure. And so one of the things that's so embarrassing is you go to a lot of public facilities and they're not, I mean, we may laugh at kind of at the grunginess and not care, because we know you're there for 10 minutes in the pro shop and then you're gone, or if that, and you're out playing, and the course matters more. But to people trying to get in the game, if they come to a place that's a dump and you could tell it's not cared for, it's a turnoff. And so we have to be more respectful of how intimidating it is to try to take up the sport, and be more welcoming, and all these things they're doing are, I mean, some of those initiatives are great, especially for the kids, because they can probably adapt more, but some of the other stuff really needs to focus. We need to be more appreciative of the facilities we have and making them better, instead of worrying about what's going to be the next big thing to build.
We've got, obviously, at the moment, the PGA Tour. We've got the Saudi Golf League, the Premier Golf League, all things that are are kicking off at the moment. At the center of this lies the players ultimately, because whatever takes off is whatever the players decide they're going to play. It feels more and more recently, especially post-COVID, and we've had such a condensed season of golf, that players are becoming less and less incentivized by money. I mean, they've all got loads of it anyway. What do you think is going to be the tipping point for these guys to say, we're going to do this or we're going to do that? Do you think it will be money, or do you think other things are at play that will entice them into going to a specific sector or wherever they're going to go?
Yeah, I think they will be enticed if they sense there is a schedule that gives them an off season that allows them to prepare for the majors and have a life. You know, a lot of these guys are, I think, discovering that playing year round, the way they swing the club now, the speed of the greens. I mean, a lot of things about the game are easier. A lot of things about the game are actually harder and more stressful. The exposure, the green speeds, there's just different things that are different stresses that their predecessors didn't have. They also, though, have clubs that are more forgiving on their body, just easier to hit, get away with misses, et cetera, but that everybody is enjoying that advantage. So there I think is a realization, though, that yeah, it's great to have all this money, but what's the point if you're not going to enjoy life a little bit? But also that's important time to kind of regroup, and they've lost that with the way that the schedule works now. It's just asking a lot of players and fans. So I really do sense, though, at the same time, when somebody offers to put $50 million or $30 million in an account, and how do you say no to that when you know you that's it, you're done. There's certain people that just doesn't matter. You know, Tiger Woods, Jordan Spieth. There's certain people who just love to play when they're in the mindset of playing and playing well, and they just don't care about the money. And so we'll always have those, but I feel like we have fewer of those players. So I wrote a long piece about this in my newsletter today about, I don't even think they care where the money comes from now. So that question has been solved, which adds to kind of the drama of what we're about to face. I mean, you guys can speak to the Newcastle situation, and is that starting to wear off? If people start like, well, hey, they're going to put money into the team, so they're going to win. And
not a big football guy,
okay,
but I mean, it's old news. It's old news in the tabloids. You know, it's like we've been. I think there's an acceptance that Saudi money and everything that goes alongside with that. Clearly that grabs headlines, but you're right, it's less so. Yeah. Like there's an acceptance now that there's just so much capital in these places that have the ability to move stuff on. Football's an obvious example because, you need money to, that's your ticket to ride in that. And that's now going to be a big agitator in the professional game, isn't it? Because, how does somebody who's maybe in the twilight of their career, or maybe just feels like maybe the knees creaking a little bit, or the back's feeling like, I'm not sure how many more years, and someone's saying, well, here's 20 million and you just got to turn up for 16 weeks of the year. It's like, oh, great. So now I don't have to do this. I don't have to play the Pro-Am on a Monday or whatever, or I haven't got to do the brand activation program on the Tuesday. I haven't got to turn up onto the Cookie Jar Golf podcast on a Wednesday, which, by the way, Geoff, they never do. And all of a sudden, life's a lot simpler, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you also find, though, that we're speaking about this in terms of grow the game, and you're talking about going to a place where, yes, you can grow it, but you can't sustain it. They're showing these aerial pictures of, like, the courses out there, and everything is barren and dead apart from this lush green golf course.
Well, it's not sustainable, is it? It's anti-sustainable golf, and that's another thing that's going to be so big in the coming years. Like, all the climate stuff.
Yeah, I'm over grow the game. I'm into sustain the game. That I've written about that years ago, and that's what we need to be worrying about. Like, we have this horrible thing has happened with the pandemic. It's affected a lot of us in different ways. And we have this moment where it this one positive thing for golf happen where it's helped the sport, and it's made people go back outside. It's making people reevaluate their lives and how they spend their time. And I think it's a permanent change. And so the sport needs to stop worrying about how to grow certain people's bottom line and think about, okay, we have this moment now. How are we going to make sure that we don't lose this one positive in this for the sport? And you look at again, it just kind of goes back to we need to take better advantage of the facilities we have instead of building something out in the desert somewhere that will host the tournament. A Greg Norman course that'll host this event and then it'll blow away in 30 years. We just need to stop doing that. And that's where the governing bodies to me have been. I see positive signs of the R&A. I'm still amazed that I know you guys did a wonderful film on Musselburgh, and there's a perfect example of a place to me that's sort of a model community course. Okay, maybe forget the horse racing part, although that's what I love about it. Yeah. But just its location, the scale of it, and it's constantly
extremely sustainable.
Very sustainable. And it's totally under siege all the time, it seems like. Mrs. Foreman's was lost. However many years ago somebody wanted to develop it. It just seems like it's how is a place like that with its history and that it gives you this model of a place that a good player can go out and enjoy, a senior citizen can enjoy, kids can enjoy. It doesn't take up a lot of room. It's not a lot to maintain. And again, yes, it has this other economic element with the racing, but if you took that away, it still is this wonderful little model. And where are the people in the sport? First, let's make sure we take care of those places and be able to point to that as an example, instead of dreaming of building the next thing and God knows where.
Well, that was what struck us with. We've talked about Cleve Hill a lot on this podcast over the last couple of years, but I think you saw the film and everything we did with, looking at that club, which has now been saved. But that was one where the sustainability of golf on there was like a no-brainer. You've got animals that cut the grass for you. It's the most brilliant land. It needs no work, and golf can live in harmony. You're like, how on earth can this not work? And again, it's people making planning decisions that don't understand it.
Can I ask you a question on that? And by the way, congratulations on that. It's just so cool. Was there a clubhouse component that was a problem, as I recall, that it needed work?
It needed work. It needed work. Yeah. So the Nick and Sam, the new owners, so the Cotswold Hub company that took it over. Hats off to them. It's massive bravery to take that on. And then it needed work on the clubhouse to make it, a safe building, develop it. They've now turned it into, in fact, I will actually add on this that me and Tom are now country members. We've joined on an unbelievable membership deal. But they've invested in the clubhouse and it's now, nice. And there's talk about maybe they'll look to develop and build out that and do some more funky stuff with it as it goes. But the vibe there is just amazing.
Well, that's why I asked, because you look at John Ashworth's done that with Goat Hill here. That's another thing that golf has not grasped quite enough, is the need to be a part of the community and have the clubhouse be available for community events or just be a nice thing. Like when we did Rustic Canyon, I remember mentioning the developer. He was struggling with the idea of the people taking their afternoon stroll. I said, well, you can use this to your advantage. If you have a nice grill, some of them might stop after their walk up the canyon and have a beer and give you money. And, and he just looked at me like I was nuts. And I still remember that. And golf does that so much where, it's okay to be part of the community. There's some places that probably should close one day a week and do the old course thing, rest the course and let people come out and walk the dogs on it and that kind of thing. So that's why I asked about that. I was just curious because I remember reading that was some component of it. And so it's really cool. It just looks like an unbelievable place.
I'll tell you a funny story. We had a golf day there a couple of weeks ago. So in Ibiza, they have this thing called closing party season. And I had an idea that you could have an end of golf season party. So it wouldn't be a closing season party. It'd be a not closing party because Cleve Hill stayed open. So obviously music was involved, and Tom managed to secure a very high quality Bose PA system, which he decided to turn the volume up to 11, while we had Pink Floyd and Duran Duran blazing down the fairways for a brief hour or so. Golf and the community were not harmonious,
nice.
but
Very nice.
after that all
No,
was
but
good.
it was a. Do you know what, Geoff? It was a very mixed. It's like with all things in life. It was a very mixed response, because I was out there and I was talking to some of the walkers and stuff, and some of the walkers are like, "What is this racket? What are you doing? I've come to walk my dog. You're killing it." And then some of the walkers you can see walking down the fairways, and they're just dancing as they're walking their dogs, and it just shows that there's all walks of people in this life, and you're going to piss off someone, whatever you do, you're going to upset someone, and people are going to be happy. So you've just got to cater for everybody, otherwise you're not going to be able to maximize what you can achieve.
You do, but I think golf has done itself a lot of harm by not wanting to be part of communities more, and not getting that. And again, thank God we're starting to see it in certain areas. People are doing that with courses. More and more places now here are seeing there's a food and beverage profit opportunity, so they're incentivized to be welcoming to the community. And then suddenly the golf course isn't viewed as, even to a non-golfer, as that place that takes up all that acreage. So it becomes that place. Oh, it's another nice thing we have here in town, in the community. And that's it's a hard thing to quantify, but in the United States, so many courses have had their backs against the ropes because it was just not a place that was seen as a community asset. And how people judge it, as you say, Tom, it can be a lot of different ways, and some people will never be happy, but you can also win over a lot of people, and the sport needs to it just needs to do that more.
I think maybe in America there is you look at the top American clubs like Pine Valley, Cypress.
Well,
they're also the gold standard of American golf is private.
Very
in the courses.
private. Yeah.
And I think that as you go down the ladder, they look up to the gold standard and they say, okay, well, we need to be private as well. So whereas in Britain, the gold standard is literally a park on Sundays. So we perhaps have a bit more leniency when it comes to inclusivity with some of our.
You do the most,
possibly.
You do, and it's wonderful.
But
I wish we had more places like that.
But it's also, nowhere's perfect. And I think it kind of leads me on to something I wanted to ask you. I mean, just, looking at some of your work as an author, and, you look at the stuff you've done, your book on Cypress Point, the work you've done around Riviera and some of the history and the stories that have happened there. Is there new projects afoot? And if so, are there any spoilers as to where it could be? Where do you go next with the books and what you start to chronicle?
I have actually started thinking about doing books again. I got to where I loved doing them, and then I got to where I got tired of not making much money, and that part didn't bother me as much as dealing with publishers. There's so many ways now to do it on your own, and there are a few publishers still doing some really nice things. So I've just started working on. It's probably not very smart to work on two at a time, but the one that would be of interest, one's a novel, and I don't want to say what the plot's about, but it relates tangentially to a few things that we discussed on this show, but in a livelier way. And it would be. We'll see how it goes. I've just started it, but I'm excited. No, the book that I really want to write, and I started it, and then I've got to be a little better organized because I want it to be really tight. I tried to do it with a book called Grounds for Golf, but I want to do a book that allows you to be an architecture critic, but without losing your mind, without being a total nut, but just to be able to look at a course with a little bit of a critical eye, but not. Just to be able to kind of keep up in a conversation. And there's a book called Wine for Normal People. So this one's tentatively titled Golf Courses for Normal People or Golf Architecture for Normal People. I'm sure some publisher, if I'm lucky enough, will throw that title out. But the idea is to make golf, make it fun to be a connoisseur of analyzing and criticizing or studying a course, and I just think that is kind of where we're at now. The next stage of seeing where people have gone and where things have evolved, you still have conversations with people where you sense they would like to be educated a little bit more on what to look for. And so I think I've figured out a way that kind of simplifies it, but also allows you to, because golf architecture people can kind of scare people off. Let's be honest.
Club Atlas is quite a scary, dark world, isn't it?
Oh, geez.
Some very angry people on there, Geoff. I don't know if you've ever met them.
I have, and it's hard to. I went in the other day, and it was just painful, and it was a good reminder of what I want to do with this book, which is remind people that it's fun to be a connoisseur.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's wine or cars or watches, it's and it raises the standards, but as we know, it can also, those people who do help raise the standards with the little bit of the snob factor can also be very off-putting, can really, really scare you off. And so I want to find that place because I think every golfer, it's always been bizarre to me that every golfer is not more interested in course design, especially when I first started writing about these things. Now, seeing where people are and how much more people do like to talk about it and are comfortable, that's kind of the next book to do, but do it small and simple. I'm tired of coffee table books. I mean, I'm giving you the fake background today, and because I've actually been sorting through my library. We have this wonderful veterans course. They're building a library, so I take my duplicates and a lot of coffee table books that I just don't enjoy, and with the internet now, the coffee table books, just, what you guys do is so much better than
I highly doubt that.
I don't like listening to Geoff moaning about
there's
you've
some
got too many copies of Alistair Mackenzie's Cypress Point lying around in the background. We'll take them off your hands, Geoff. We'll take them. These
are coffee table books of things that are I just open them, and I mean, some are great, but some you just go, oh boy, this was a time and a place, and this was, and they're always the ones. Some of them my mom got for me, some I bought, and of course there's always some inscription at the beginning that it's the daughter gave it to dad, and then dad took it to the used bookstore. Yeah. And somehow it's got to be short,
hasn't it? If it's going to tap into that base,
Yes.
Spirit of St. Andrews is not a crazy long read, is it? It's okay. It's
but it even probably could have been shorter. And his first book was a little bit tighter. I'm looking at it; it's really small. But yeah, I want it to be short and simple, and I just don't think people are going to read a long book, and it doesn't need to be. I mean, the three basic principles that I believe that if you think about a golf course, that then break off into subcategories if you really want to go deep, are the number one question should be, is this a course you could play every day and not get tired of? Is it fun every day? And then that speaks to a whole bunch of different things, strategy and different stuff. And then can you remember every hole, which seems simplistic, but then that speaks to the routing. It speaks to whether the architect tried to kind of move the course through the land in different ways, and you can actually go through it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've driven out on a property and I'm trying to remember what the 12th hole was. You just played it. And you're like, that is not a good sign. And then the other factor, these are the three factors. I'm giving you the book now. Is it a place you can take your dog for a walk? And that one kind of goes off in two areas. One, just speaks to the property and the scale, and is it a beautiful place to go for a walk without your clubs, and not going to kill you? But it also in some ways speaks to the culture of a course if they are dog friendly, which is not the case with like 99% of the courses here.
But it's a good lead indicator for good courses, for sure.
It is, or it's an indicator, because I have heard of more places. Pebble Beach is one. That's been that way a while, but where they don't care if you're out late in the afternoon walking your dog. And 15, 20 years ago, my God, that was just the thought of that was just a crime at a housing development. I'm hearing more and more places that are not having a problem with that. And that's nice to hear. That means they don't take themselves absurdly seriously, and there's a culture there that says, we're here to live, and we're here to relax, and we're here to enjoy the outdoors, and we know you'll pick up for your dog, and we know your dog's not going to go and dig a hole in the green and whatever kooky stuff that people come up with. So those are kind of the things that I look at now when I think about a course. But again, it breaks off into all these little subcategories, which I'll explain, and all that kind of stuff.
I'll tell you where your book might have come in handy, Geoff. About 2 years ago, we started this podcast. Very, very new to it all. We thought we were smart, and we really weren't. And we managed to secure an evening with a friend of yours, Mike Clayton. Christ, we were so in above our head. It was unbelievable. The things he was talking about, we were like, golf course architecture, just in too deep. He really took us to task, didn't he, Sam? He was
well, I think partly the joy for us of Cookie Jar is maybe it's been, over the 2 years that we've been doing it, as it's definitely opened our eyes to looking at courses and clubs in a different way. And I think maybe that's part of the journey of it. Maybe I don't know, I'm kind of guessing, but I think there's some of the earlier stuff where Mike's sitting there talking about, Royal Melbourne, Kingston Heath, and you just sort of nodding and going, okay, yeah, no, I think I'm vaguely following it, width and angles, but where do we go from here, Mike? But, it's a topic. And I think that's in there probably speaks to what you're talking about, actually, Geoff, which is, making that stuff accessible,
Yeah, it has to be, it's so bizarre when you think about what goes into building a course, the acreage it takes up, and then what goes when it actually opens and is functioning as a club or a course, how invested people are in it, and yet how little investment they've placed in understanding the design of it. And it's just always been a peculiar thing to me or to somebody like Mike. And so, but at the same time, we don't want, it's a tricky thing. You want people to think about those things, but you'd like them to understand some of the reasons why architects do things, or why the old course inspired various people, or why other places are great models for golf architecture. So you don't want to be disrespectful, but you also want to say, well, you do have to do a little bit of study, but I also believe that it's more important to get people thinking about those things and talking about them, and appreciating the things that make them want to come back to a course, even if their opinion is not as informed. And they'll love the game more. They'll get other people hooked on it, and it just makes your life as a person in the sport better.
I think on that note, Geoff, you've been extraordinarily kind with your time, and it's been fabulous to speak to you and learn a little bit more about your history. And I think we could have gone for an extra couple of hours in terms of everything that you've managed to achieve in the sport. And we really appreciate you taking the time to come on and speak to us tonight.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. I love everything you're doing. So it's my pleasure, and happy to do it anytime.
Oh, likewise, and I will add the quadrilateral is I'm really enjoying that, actually. It's good.
Thank you.
It is good.
It's the now you say actually. Now I know that's because it has nothing to do with me. It's the format of the newsletter, which I'm assuming is the case, because I was reluctant, honestly, to go this route. I think we all get too much email.
Yeah, you pay, don't you? It's a paid for email, and it's
for some people. Yeah, I have a free edition, which I do once a week, but then I do other ones, and I put some or all of it behind the paywall. But that said, the reason I finally turned to it because I started reading several newsletters and really starting my day that way, even though I still get newspapers on the weekend. I still get 3 of them, believe it or not, probably out of guilt. So that I get them the last day they stop printing. But I have started to really enjoy the format. And then for a writer, it's a different kind of format. So you better. I feel more pressure when I write something because I know I'm dumping it in your email box, and it better be good. And then people are paying me directly as well. But it's also a fun format, and you guys have a newsletter. You feel like it's just a different thing when you're putting that in somebody's email box. You better not be wasting their time.
You feel like it could be invasive at times because if it's white noise, like you get enough of that from, I don't know, this is where I'm going to put my foot in it. So I probably won't name some of the other ones, but there's a lot of big ones and you're like, this is just white noise. And you've literally copied and pasted it,
Yeah. So and I don't want that. I want to make you smarter or entertain you somehow, because that's what I expect when I subscribe to one. And that's a fun challenge for me. The blog, I've been doing it a long time and I still like to do it, but it's just not as much fun as writing in that format for whatever reason. I mean, it really is like you're writing a long email to a friend, only in this case, it's a lot of people. And then there's just a pressure because once you hit send, you can't correct those mistakes. And,
well, Tom moved the email responsibility over to me about a few months ago, and now the pressure, you sit there for 2 hours before you hit the send button, just sweating, just panicking and rereading. So, but you've got a lot more experience in this than me.
But it's a good pressure, I think, and I don't think it's going away. I don't know what you guys think, but I don't. The website reading experience is so bad now with most publications with pop-ups and all that. What I use, Substack's very clean. Your newsletter is very clean. You're not bothered. You're not bothered midway through with a pop-up video. It's all your choice what you get to consume. And so we'll see. I think it's here to stay. And then it also has just freed me up to I just pretty much write what I want to write, which is really fun. To not hold back. I don't enjoy that. I like putting it out there, and so we'll see how it goes. But thank you for mentioning it, and I appreciate it.
Not a problem. But you did just mention that you like to come away from newsletters feeling educated, and I know that you have happened across a few of our newsletters. So unless you like the pressure of the showers at golf clubs or how the demise of kibble is
Geoff
affecting
the
the world.
article. Jeff
are you kidding? I've been trying to get a bottle of it. I will get one over. No. There's a place here. I found it's not the Wolfschmidt. But it'll do because I have had it before, and I hope this is not a. Did you ever? Is it a Brexit thing? Did you ever get it?
No. So I've made a lot of phone calls. We don't know if it was. I love the fact that you picked up on the nuance. Is it Brexit? Is it a production? I actually can't. I've got no. It's good because it shows you've read it. I don't.
I'm almost certain, by the way, that Sam has just got stocks in Wolfschmidt, and he's actually just driving up the demand, and the price has gone up. I think that's what he's doing.
I ran a search. It's expensive stuff now. It's the word's out. It may have been the cookie jar. Newsletter that did it, but
so I believe it's a distribution decision by the company, which is a Danish company. So maybe that they're not producing it in significant quantities to warrant shipping and paying the import duties into the UK. But maybe they have stopped producing it. I mean, there's other iconic golf club drinks in the UK. Vodka Pimm's. Pimm's is drunk at Wimbledon. If you've heard of it.
I'm a huge Pimm's fan.
Right, so it
ruined my last round at the old course. I had one. I shot 38 on the front. Like I said, this was in 2015. I barely play anymore, and I was really playing well. And I had a Pimm's in a can, and it was strong. Usually the Pimm's over there aren't strong enough for me.
In the cans, they're highly concentrated. That's the thing.
It just took me out. I was all over the place.
Changing wind direction, though, I'm sure it was coming back into on the way back.
There was that. So
let's not
the
put
38
all
was but it was the day after the Open with the final round hole locations on the front.
Oh,
so
nice.
Well, anyway. But yes, Pimm's
have vodka Pimm's. It's like a different one. So the Pimm's that you drink is basically a gin based. I can't believe I'm doing this on a golf podcast.
No.
Pimm's is like a gin based. That's the one everyone drinks. It's a darker color.
Right.
But a lot of golf clubs around the UK stock this other Pimm's, which is called vodka Pimm's. So it's just it's made with vodka as the base ingredient rather than gin, and it's clearer in color. Now, as I say, it's a very, very nice little drink at a lot of golf clubs, but none of them can get hold of it. And it turns out, I don't think they've stopped producing it, but Pimm's have only producing it in incredibly small batches. So there's a few clubs, I believe the Berkshire down in Surrey, I think they've got quite a high stock of it at the moment, and a couple of other clubs. But yeah, it's like getting hold of hen's teeth, Geoff. It's rare.
Interesting, yeah.
This is the kind of niche stuff that we spend our time researching.
Well, the clubs here are just all about milkshakes, so which are great, but not quite as sophisticated.
Jeff's there in the quadrilateral, cutting edge of the game about what's going on, and we're there just what's going on with the alcoholic beverages.
I did a blog post on I thought it was fantastic. In fact, I came across Herb Wynn's reference to it, and then, like I said, I'm going through the library. Who was somebody else? I just opened it up. Oh, damn it, I'm going to have to email it to you. But I found another reference to Kimmel, and I was very excited.
Yeah, there will be.
Yeah, so it's been a popular drink with, who was it, Longhurst? Oh, now it's really bothering me. Anyway, I'll think of it.
But
somebody mentioned
it, though, isn't it? And it's just such a niche drink, but you can't help but, and I think that was the thing when I did a lot of the research for it. It's like Prestwick, Honourable Company of Edinburgh Golfers, R&A, they're the big consumers of the product. They just so happen to be the trendsetters in the game when everything took hold. So it's pretty fair to assume that if you were a decent golf club that was establishing in the late 1800s, you might just copy what was already working down the road at Prestwick, So it's interesting stuff.
No, it is. And love those little traditions. They're fun. So,
this tangent has gone on far too long, and I tried to wrap this up about 20 minutes ago.
You did.
Anyway, Geoff, thank you very, very much for your time. It's been thoroughly enjoyable, and now we need to send you a bottle of Kimmel. So thank you for your time, and we'll speak to you again, I'm sure.
Thank you, and keep up the great work.
Watch this.